Let me tell you about one of the most annoying and frustrating incidents being a first-time developer in the work world, and one of the incidents that really helped me or shaped me or modeled me into the developer that I am today. I was well into my first year as a graduate developer, straight from university. And one of my first tasks was to develop an application that was to be used by about 100 people. And all these people are my colleagues. I work with them in the same institution. Everybody needed to have a password in order to use this application because this was a financial institution, and hence there is sensitive information involved. In order to protect sensitive information, one of the ways is to use a password. So everybody needed to have a password. So I'm done with this application and I'm now dealing with maintenance, and I'm doing a few tweaks here and there. And all of a sudden the phone rings. One of my colleagues says, I forgot my password. Now luckily I had a manual way of resetting a user's password. I had a process that I would use in order to set a user's password. So that means nobody would set a password on their own unless I reset the password for them. So I had this manual process of resetting the password. Now the second call comes in, and then another person says, I forgot my password. The third call comes in, the fourth call comes in, the fifth call comes in, and this is over a period of time. I keep getting multiple calls of people forgetting their passwords over and over again, and I started to just really get annoyed, because instead of dealing with maintenance issues and instead of adding some features that I was tasked with, I'm now dealing with the same problem over and over and over again. That's when you know you've hit rock bottom as a developer, when you have a task that you have to keep repeating over and over again. And this is one of the experiences that as a developer taught me how to make a system autonomous. And what I mean by that is that the system needs to be able to sustain itself. So it needs whatever happens on the system, the user should find a way to get themselves out of like a situation, or they have to have a way of solving problems using the system instead of having to consult a developer all the time. So this was the first time where I really learned about the password recovery feature, and I learned the reason why it was important for many of the websites that I know to have this password recovery feature on their website. Because can you just imagine 1 billion people in this world just calling Google and saying, I forgot my password? That seems very, very tedious. So I learned about password recovery through this process, and in today's tutorial I am going to show you how to perform the easiest password recovery that is possible as a beginner. If you're interested in that, or if you're interested in learning how to code and improving your coding skills, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. My channel is Coding 101, and this is the place whereby I put up videos that try to help you become a better developer, one video at a time. If that's something that piques your interest, then please do subscribe to my channel. Like this video if you've learned something new, or if you just like me, just like the video. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the comments section as well. I've been receiving a lot of comments and I've been replying to many comments, so I'm really happy to see that many of you are interacting with the videos. That really encourages me to keep making more and more and more video. So essentially that's it for today's tutorial. We're going to be making password recovery using React and Node.js. We're going to use Node.js as backend. So in the Node.js aspect of this, we're just going to be sending the password recovery email. So yeah, let me just explain to you how this is actually going to work. So it's a 4-step process, nothing too complicated. So the first step that we have is the user actually signaling that they have actually forgot their password. So that is our step right here. This is where the user signals to us that they've in essence forgotten their password. And after they've done doing that, then an email or a password recovery email is sent to the user. Now this password contains OTP, which is a 4-digit code that is going to be needed in order to verify the user's identity in essence. Then after that, the user takes the OTP and then they enter the OTP in the website that we're going to create, and this will in essence be verifying the user's identity. And after we verify the user's identity by means of OTP, we give the user an opportunity to be able to reset their password, and ultimately we're going to lead them to the home screen, showing them that they have successfully reset their password. So it's a 4-step process, nothing too complicated, nothing too rigorous. Let's get into our code. I have 2 files that I've created in here. I have the client file and I have the client I have the client folder and I have the server folder. So this is a full stack application that is going to be needing communication between both the client and both the server. And be reminded that we're only using the server in order to send that OTP or password recovery email. So let's start with the server. You know how to create the server. If you don't know how to create a Node.js project, then I have a video. I will put the link on the description box so that you can learn a little bit about that. So just create a simple Node.js application, and that's where we're going to be putting our email or our password recovery email sending functionality. So this is our server file. This is where we're running our server. We've done this email sending functionality multiple times in my previous videos, but I will leave one such video in my cards. So this is our email sending functionality. Note that we're using Node Mailer in order to actually send this email, and in order to attach an HTML file, because we want it to be a very professional looking email. This is our HTML file. Note that I've put the HTML code inside of like these backticks, because what I want to do is to be able to dynamically input that OTP that you see over here. So the OTP is going to be coming from the front end. So the front end is going to be responsible for constructing that OTP. So this is where our email sending functionality. I'm going to put this code in the description box. If I don't, just hit me up on my comment on the comment section. And over here, no, this is just a testing functionality. I was just testing if that route is running. So essentially, all in all, on our server side, we just created a email sending functionality that is able, and we've attached that to our router that you see over here. So this is a post route that we're going to be using, and our post route is going to be receiving two items or two data points. The first thing that is going to need from the front end side is the OTP. Which is the 4-digit code that I have alluded to. And the other thing that it's going to need is the user's email, because we're going to need the user's email in order to send this OTP so that they can be able to recover their password. So this is just about it on our server side. If this is a bit confusing for you, then I appreciate any questions in my comment section. Now let's go to the front end aspect of our project. I've created a folder over here called components, and inside of components I have three components. I have three components that I'm actually using. The first stage is the login phase. So the login screen you've probably seen when we are starting up this video, but let me just show it to you again. So this is our login screen. So this is the first thing that the user is going to be able to see, and in order for them to recover their password, they would need to come over here and click this forgot password link, which is going to lead them to our second screen, which is the OTP input component. Let me show you how that one looks like. And so this is our email verification component. So you can see this four input elements that you see over here. This is where you're going to put your OTP, and then after you've put in your OTP, you're going to click verify account, and it's going to take you to a password resetting screen. And this right over here will be our password resetting screen. I'm going to show you how everything works in a moment. Then after that, it's just going to say welcome home, or you've successfully reset your password. As simple as that. So now let's see this in action before we execute it. Come over here and I need to put in my email. After I put in my email, I click forgot password. And then after that, I'm going to get this screen over here, which is going to say, we've sent a code to your email, email23@gmail.com. And then I'm going to be asked to put in that 4-digit code. And if I don't put it properly, obviously it's going to tell me that it's not the correct code. And luckily, because I know the correct code, I'm going to put it in there so that, I believe it's 3244. So this is just a random code that has been generated. And then if the code is correct, we're going to be led to this password changing functionality. We reset our password, push reset, and there you have it. Our password is successfully set. Welcome home. Right. Okay, so now that we've gotten the nitty-gritties out of the way, let's find out how we're actually going to create our code. So we're going to be starting off with a pretty much blank application, except for the components that we created. So I do want to remind you that these these components were created with Tailwind CSS. So you need to be really good with Tailwind CSS. I have a small tutorial on Tailwind CSS. I'm going to leave the video up on the card. So make sure that you install Tailwind CSS in order to make this application. So the first thing that we're going to start with, let me just get rid of these because, yeah, cool. we're going to create a use context, and use context is going to make sure that we are able to aggregate our state data at one place or at one setting. So we're going to create context, which is already part of JavaScript's, which is already part of React's inner language, like that. So we're going to have to make sure that we also import these things from React, like that. That should be fine. Get rid of this extra statement, it's not necessary. Okay, so now we need a couple of states. As you can see, we've imported states over there at the very top. We need at least three main states that we're going to need in order to run this application. So the first state that we're going to need is the page state, because it's going to allow us to navigate between those 4 components, between the login page, the OTP input, the recovered page, and the reset page. So this is going to just allow us to navigate between all these components. And then we need the email page, the email state, that is going to capture the user's email, which we're going to ultimately use in order to send the OTP code. And then we're going to need the state which is going to capture the OTP code. So these are the 3 important states that we're going to need. So let's start off with how we're going to use the first state. The first state, which is the page state, is going to allow us to navigate between those 2 components. So essentially we're going to have to create a function that is going to allow us to navigate between all those components. You can see that when the page name is called login, then you need to give us the login component. And then the other ones, we're going to use them at a later stage. So now what we're going to do, we're going to create a context provider. So that means this parent component is going to pass on these states to its child components. That is essentially the reason for having use context, or for using use context, in order to capture that state data and pass it downwards into your components. So I'm just going to wrap everything that is inside of there with a provider. And I'm going to give the provider these values that you see over here, page, set page, because remember, we're going to use these values inside of the other components. Then inside of that, I want to put in that navigation function, which is going to allow us, so instead of having to directly put in that login component, I'm going to just put in that navigate components function, or component, which is going to allow us to just navigate between all those components. We don't want to do anything too complicated, but you could use React Router DOM to actually do this instead of having to, but I find it a bit efficient to work with it this way, because it's much more simpler. You don't have to navigate to a totally different page. So we're done with our app.js. Now we're going to move on to the login page. So the responsibility of the login page is actually to receive the email that is being sent, or the email, or the user email. The responsibility is to actually receive the user email from the customer, or from the user of the website. But before we do anything, we need to get a couple of those states that we've gotten from the context. We need to get those. And we need to make sure that we import the recovery context at the top of our page. And then after that, we need to now use this over here, set email, inside of our input tag. So we want, every time the user inputs the email, we want to update the email state in this part over here. That's the reason why we use context, is to enable us to actually manipulate the state on a different component. So as you can see, we've implemented an onChange event. So every time the user types in the email, that email is going to be stored inside of this state. And so now we have a button that is going to allow us to actually send that OTP email. And so that button is at the very bottom. This is the button over here. It's called Forgot Password. So we expect that every time the user clicks Forgot Password, we need to actually handle the event, that onClick event, and we need to tie it to a function that we're going to call navigate to OTP, like that. So now we need to actually create this function over here. Alright, so there is our function. Before I explain to you what is happening here, let's just get rid of this, because I don't think we're going to be needing the useState function over here, the useState hook, sorry. So our navigate to OTP function, it does a couple of things. The first thing that it does is that it creates that random OTP code using meth.random. So, and then it takes that OTP and it sets it to the OTP state that we extracted from app.js, you remember? So this OTP is going to be in here, it's going to be saved in here by means of use context. Then after we've created that OTP code, we're going to use Axios in order to run that post router that we created on the back end. So this is our post router, and inside of the body of our post router is the OTP, and it is the recipient's email. So yeah, and then after that, after we're done doing everything, after we're done executing that router, we just like move on to the next page, which is the OTP page, which is going to allow us to input the OTP. Alright, so I think we're done with the login stage. Now we can go to the OTP input stage. So the OTP input stage, the first thing that you notice over here is that we need to tell the user that we sent an email, and we need to be specific where we actually sent this email. So that is why we're probably going to dynamically render that information over here. But where are we going to actually get this email? Lucky for us, because of use context, we can extract this email right from the app.js and actually input it in here. So that's one of the first things that we're going to do. And so you will notice that we're not just getting the email, we're getting the OTP and the set page setter as well. So we are not only getting that, because we're going to use that, so in our component. So yeah, there's our email over there. I think that is fine. So another thing that we need to learn how to do in password recovery is that we need to give the user the opportunity to be able to resend an email, because like, what if maybe something happened and maybe they didn't enter the email correctly, or maybe the email didn't arrive or something, but we need to give the user the opportunity to be able to resend the email. So that is why if you go down to the bottom of our email verification component, you can see that the user is allowed to actually resend that email, but only after 60 seconds, because we don't want them to continuously mess around with the resend functionality. So they need to know to use that resend functionality wisely, right? So that is what we're going to try to implement on the OTP component. So we need a couple of states in order to actually run this. We need a timeout or a time count state. Let's go to the OTP component. We need a timer like that, so I'm going to call it time count, and I'm actually going to create a function which is going to be called resend OTP. So there's our function. So all it does is to make sure that the OTP sends is resent, right? So we need another state that we're going to call disable, because you will notice that if we go to our text, this text over here is blue, but a minute ago it was gray. That means it was disabled. So we are controlling that that flip-flop through a state called disabled. So whenever the state is disabled, or when disabled is equals to true, then we don't need to do anything. Then we need to make that that entire anchor tag to not do anything, essentially. But if it is the disabled button or the disabled state is turned off, then we are able to actually send or resend our email using the same method that we said before. And then after we're done doing that, we set disabled back to true again, so that we can gray out that anchor tag again. And then after that, we're able to tell the user that, hey, listen, we've just resent that OTP again. And then after that, we start the timer again at 60 seconds. So that is our resend OTP functionality. And in order for that to work continuously, we need to put it inside of a React hook called useEffect. So it needs to be inside of a useEffect in order for it to work appropriately. So what the useEffect essentially does, it counts down. It counts down all the time. So after 60 seconds has elapsed it, or before 60 seconds has elapsed it, it counts down. So we put our counter inside of here. So every single, you can see that over here we have set an interval of like 1 second. So it's going to be counting down from like 60 seconds, and it's going to make sure that every time we reach 0, or every time we reach 0 seconds, then what's going to happen is that that set disabled is going to be set to false, thereby enabling the user to actually use that password recovery resending anchor tag. So yeah, that's essentially it. I'm probably going to do a tutorial on use effect, so don't worry if you're having trouble understanding that, or you could also do a couple of research on your own, but I'm pretty much interested. If there's any of you interested in me doing a use effect tutorial, let me know in the comment section and I would happily do so. Right, so we're done with that thing. Oh, we're not actually done, because presentation matters. So you can see that the colors were changing a little bit and the wording was changing a little bit. So we need to make sure that if our anchor tag is disabled, it looks a certain way, and if it's not disabled, then also it looks a certain way as well. So we're going to just say if disable is equals to true, or if the anchor tag has been disabled, let it be gray. If the anchor tag has been disabled, make sure that there's no pointer hovering, and make sure you underline everything. And then after that, you also change the wording as well. And this is where we put our time count, so that every time it counts how many seconds are currently left until the user can be able to use that password recovery email resending functionality. Wow, such a heavy word. So yeah, I think that's essentially about it, but except we haven't done one more thing, which is the main functionality for this entire component is to be able to verify the OTP that you're getting from the user, right? So before we verify, we need to actually capture that OTP. So I am going to create a state, which is going to be an array containing 4 digits. So the way that our input tags are structured, let me just show you. The way that our input tags are structured, these are 4 individual input tags. So essentially that means we're going to have to go around extracting the value of these 4 input tags. So that means we're going to have about 4. There's an npm package that does this more easily. So you can look for that, or if I find it, I'm going to just leave the link for that in the description box. So we're just going to do an on change for each of those individual components, and this is how we're going to do it. So say for the first one over here, for our first input tag, we're going to take the value and put it on the first element. Yeah, we're going to replace the first element with the value that we get from the first input tag. And we're going to do the same with the others. So say for example, the second input tag, we're going to take the value from the second input tag by means of an onChange event, and we're going to replace that value. We're going to replace the second element in the array with that value. So we're going to do the same with the rest of the others, so I'm not going to get into too much detail with those ones. So now that we're done capturing our OTP information, then what we need to do is we need to verify our OTP. So that's going to need a function. So we're going to use this verify OTP function in order to verify our OTP. So you can see that it tells us, okay, I'm going to get rid of this console log because I was just using it to debug. So you can see that what it does is that because this is an array, because we've structured this as an array, what it does is that it joins that array and so that it forms just one string. Then it just like takes that string and converts it into a number and checks whether that number is the same as the OTP. And if it is the same, then we move on to the next page. If it's not the same, then we just tell the user that, hey, the OTP that you've entered is not correct. So we need to actually tie this verify OTP functionality to our verify button. So there's verify account. I'm just going to put it in there. Oh, sorry, I need an onClick event to make that happen. So, and then I think that should be it. Our password reset, we're not going to be focused too much on password reset, I know, because that one is going to need us to actually involve a database. So we're not going to focus too much on that. But if you want, I do have a login. I have a login authentication video that you can check out to learn how to interact with databases in order to set or reset your password. So in this component, what we just want to do is, it's just a means to an end. whether somebody inputs their password or not. It's not that much of a concern to us. We just want to move to the next stage. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to call that function over there called change password. The change password function is just going to allow us to move on to the next page. And there it is. So I think that's about it, because the recovered component doesn't really need any much of JavaScript or so. So I think that is about it. Also, what we need to do now is to actually test what we've created. So I'll put my actual email in here and then click forgot password. And there we go, email verification. We've sent a code to your email. So now I need to check my email to see if whether or not I've received that email. So there is the email. As you can see, click on the email. There is our OTP 6973. We can take our OTP. You can copy it, or you can just like memorize it. Wait, what was that? 6973. 6973. And we verify account. So you can see in a minute or in a second, it's going to turn blue. Yeah, there you go. I think my phone is even responding to the OTP email. I don't know what that is. We verify. Okay, so there seemed to be a problem. It's saying reset is not defined. So that has to do with the components that we have over here. So we need to make sure that they're all imported at the top. So we need to import them over here at the very top. So our 4 components have been successfully imported at the very top. Let's try it again. Get rid of the console. There's our new OTP code, 5658 5658. Verify account, fingers crossed. There we go. There's our change password. You can choose to put whatever you want to put in here. And then we press reset password, and there you go. Password has been successfully set. Welcome home. So essentially, that is how you recover your password. If you create an application, it's a must. You need to give users the opportunity to be able to solve their own problems. That is the art of being a developer. You need to give power to the users so that you don't have to constantly be doing things over and over again. That is the lesson from today's tutorial. I hope you've learned something, and if you've learned something, then please do like my video. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. If you are struggling with something or you would like to make a comment, leave your comments in the comment section. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time on Coding 101.